Bene, ben arrivate, grazie a tutti per essere venuti, grazie agli interpreti che ci aiuteranno. Io passo immediatamente il microfono alla segretaria internazionale della Filicams, Giuliana Mesina.
Poi ovviamente mi verrà data tutta l'illustrazione da parte del coordinatore Gabriele che è fianco a me. Come diceva lui, io sono Giuliana Mesina, sono una segretaria nazionale della Filicams CGL, ho la delega alle politiche globali, quindi anche internazionali, diciamo. Oggi, come dire, cominciamo appunto questi lavori. Mi fa piacere passare immediatamente la parola al segretario generale della Filicams di Firenze, che in quanto città ospitante, diciamo con molto piacere vi farà un saluto anche a nome delle altre organizzazioni, Fisascat e Filtux, delle Fiorentine, e quindi subito ve lo presento. Massimiliano.
Sì, buongiorno a tutti. Io a nome delle federazioni di CGL, CISD e WIL, dei lavoratori del commercio, del turismo e dei servizi, intanto vi do il benvenuto. Voglio dire, a Firenze siamo in una sala, diciamo, di una grande infrastruttura fiorentina, la fortezza d'Abbasso, cioè questa, come avete letto sicuramente, è un luogo tra l'altro che viene, come si dice, organizzato da lavoratori i quali noi rappresentiamo. Sono i lavoratori, voglio dire, del polo fieristico, perché questa è una struttura che ospita, diciamo, i momenti più importanti della città dal punto di vista dell'esposizione, dal punto di vista, voglio dire, dei convegni e dei congressi. Quindi noi siamo quella organizzazione sindacale che appunto rappresenta anche questi lavoratori. Quindi io non voglio dilungare molto i lavori, vi porto ovviamente il saluto, il benvenuto delle organizzazioni sindacali e vi auguro soprattutto un buon lavoro in questi 2 giorni. Grazie.
Grazie Massimiliano. Ora, non tanto perché io di origine sia fiorentina, però in generale, diciamo, anche come Filicams nazionale abbiamo pensato che fare queste conferenze, quindi lavorare in questi giorni in questa città fosse un valore aggiunto, e ci auguriamo che anche nelle prossime ore per tutti voi essere qua diventi un valore aggiunto di queste giornate. E anche per questo ovviamente abbiamo invitato, abbiamo anche avuto il piacere, insomma, di avere qua l'assessore Pietro Roselli della provincia di Firenze, assessore all'agricoltura, proprio perché il benvenuto di questa città diventa un benvenuto anche a livello provinciale, anche per l'importanza ovviamente di trovarci qua in questa struttura, come diceva Massimiliano, anche in concomitanza con una manifestazione che qua è molto importante, avete visto, che si chiama Terra Futura, magari nei prossimi giorni avrete modo anche di visitarla, che non a caso parla di sostenibilità, quindi ovviamente, insomma, ci sentivamo sicuramente in un clima per noi molto piacevole, nel quale ci sentiamo un po' a casa. Do subito la parola all'assessore Pietro Roselli.
Grazie, rivolgo molto volentieri un saluto agli organizzatori e a tutte le delegazioni che sono convenute a Firenze per questa importante assise in ordine all'organizzazione sindacale sovranazionale, perché io mi occupo di agricoltura nella provincia di Firenze. Voi siete di settore sul servizi, commercio artigianale, commercio e turismo, che è molto affine, soprattutto è affine ad una moderna agricoltura come c'è oggi in Europa, che è un'attività di multiservizi. Qui è tipico in Toscana che le attività agricole siano intimamente connesse con l'attività della ricettività, dell'agriturismo, dell'ospitalità, dei beni culturali. E cosa accade? Accade quello che voi oggi vi ponete come questione di contrattazione, che non è più nell'ambito dell'azienda a sé stante isolata, anche nel mio settore dell'agricoltura. Ero stamattina nei Chianti, incontro in un'azienda che appartiene al gruppo Behringer, a sua volta nella holding del gruppo Forst multinazionale australiano, e quindi quella piccolina o piccola media azienda nel Chianti sta in relazioni internazionali in ordine all'attività di marketing, di proprietà, e quindi anche come dire, i diritti e le condizioni di lavoro devono avere questo tipo di relazione. Il nostro mondo occidentale si era illuso che poteva reggere i processi di mondializzazione della concorrenza delocalizzando le attività laddove il costo del lavoro era inferiore. È stata una pia illusione trasferire in Romania o in altre parti le attività produttive. Noi dobbiamo invece partire dal rispetto dei diritti, della corretta organizzazione del lavoro, della qualificazione del prodotto, perché solo così si può reggere la concorrenza e continuare ad affermare nel nostro vecchio continente buoni servizi, buoni lavori, anche una buona produzione manifatturiera che rende ancora capace di competere sulle piazze internazionali. Quindi il nostro è con grande soddisfazione un augurio di buon lavoro qui a Firenze su un tema oggi fortemente importante e attuale.
Grazie all'assessore, anzi mi dà, come dire, il gancio per proseguire, diciamo, in queste prime immagini e prime parole di benvenuto, perché in questi giorni parleremo di multinazionali, parleremo di globalizzazione e noi avevamo invitato Francesco, scusate, per gli amici Francuccio Gesualdi, che molti di voi conosceranno, il fondatore del Centro Nuovo Modello di Sviluppo, la persona che qui in Italia ha lavorato moltissimo per il concetto di consumo critico e con il quale nelle ultime settimane, negli ultimi mesi anche noi abbiamo lavorato molto nell'ambito delle campagne abiti puliti, che peraltro in queste ultime ore, in queste ultime settimane diciamo, hanno ottenuto il grande successo purtroppo successivo al crollo del Rana Plaza a Dhaka che tutti voi avete visto, che ha provocato più di 1000 morti. Non poteva essere presente a portarci la sua testimonianza per quello che riguarda ovviamente, diciamo, la cooperazione e la solidarietà a livello globale, che cercano ovviamente, per quanto riguarda le organizzazioni sindacali, di innalzare le condizioni di lavoro e le tutele, onde evitare appunto questi effetti delle delocalizzazioni e degli effetti negativi di una globalizzazione che va alla ricerca di condizioni disumane di lavoro per risparmiare, ovviamente per innalzare i profitti. Quindi Francesco Gesualdi non poteva essere presente, però è stato così cortese da inviarci un videomessaggio che noi ora cercheremo di farvi vedere al meglio e sentire al meglio, dove lui stesso fa l'accenno ovviamente alle campagne abiti puliti, che noi ritenevamo fossero molto in tema in 2 giornate in cui si parla di multinazionali transsettoriali, proprio perché tra l'altro anche in questo settore e noi ne siamo coinvolti nell'ultimo pezzetto della filiera, perché occupandoci di commerciare magari appunto anche prodotti di abbigliamento, e appunto con molto piacere vi portiamo anche il saluto di Francesco Gesualdi.
Buongiorno, sono Francesco Gesualdi e desidero portare il saluto del Centro Nuovo Modello di Sviluppo e della campagna Abiti Puliti, 2 organizzazioni di cittadinanza attiva che si battono a fianco dei lavoratori del sud del mondo per la difesa dei loro diritti sindacali. Il nostro ambito specifico di attività è quello del settore abbigliamento e calzaturiero, che prima degli altri hanno cominciato i processi di delocalizzazione produttiva. Sono questi due settori ad ampia frammentazione, dove i grandi marchi che possiedono i marchi stanno abbandonando quasi totalmente la produzione per concentrarsi invece soltanto sulla fase commerciale e delegano ad imprese terze del sud del mondo l'appalto della produzione dei loro capi di abbigliamento. Noi interveniamo sempre su richiesta dei lavoratori ogni volta che si verifica una violazione dei loro diritti, e il nostro compito specifico è quello di intervenire presso i committenti facendo tutta la pressione possibile attraverso i mezzi di informazione e attraverso l'invio di messaggi da parte dei consumatori e dei cittadini per indurli ad intervenire presso i loro fornitori affinché cambino i comportamenti nei confronti dei loro lavoratori. Siamo intervenuti in questi ultimi anni a fianco di lavoratori indonesiani, a fianco di lavoratori vietnamiti, cinesi e purtroppo anche bengalesi, soprattutto per quanto riguarda incidenti che compromettono addirittura la vita di questi lavoratori. E fra gli incidenti ultimi che sono avvenuti sicuramente c'è l'incendio alla fabbrica Tasrin di circa un anno fa, che ha ucciso circa 115 persone, e l'ultimo in ordine di tempo, forse il più grave addirittura nella storia della produzione industriale, il crollo del Rana Plaza che ha ucciso 700 lavoratrici. E purtroppo ecco, in queste situazioni succede sempre che c'è un grande rimbalzo di responsabilità. I committenti rifiutano di pagare adducendo così il pretesto che loro non sono responsabili diretti della produzione, i proprietari delle imprese non pagano adducendo come pretesto che oramai si trovano in grande difficoltà economica, e la conclusione è che le vittime non ricevono nessun tipo di indennizzo da parte di chi che sia. Ecco, noi crediamo che in queste situazioni debba valere il principio della responsabilità in solido, in quanto tutti i soggetti che si avvalgono dei vantaggi della filiera produttiva trasferita in questi paesi dove la licenza di sfruttamento è così alta, poi debba così spingerli ad assumersi la propria responsabilità quando avvengono questi disastri che appunto compromettono delle vite umane. La nostra possibilità di riuscire nella nostra azione di sostegno sarà tanto più alta quanto più riusciamo ad ottenere così solidarietà e a creare alleanze a tutti i livelli, per cui noi ci auguriamo fortemente che da parte delle organizzazioni sindacali, sia quelle italiane ma anche quelle europee, ci sia così la disponibilità a collaborare sempre di più tutti assieme per riuscire a far trionfare i diritti sindacali dei lavoratori del sud del mondo così spesso messi a repentaglio. Ecco, con questo augurio di una collaborazione futuro, io ripeto di nuovo l'augurio di buon lavoro da parte delle vostre due conferenze.
Wish you a good conference.
Grazie a Francesco.
Thank you to Francesco Gesualdi. Now we truly get into the merit of the project that we will be dealing with this afternoon and tomorrow, the project MuMMIA. I will not explain this acronym. I leave this task to our coordinator, Gabriele Guglielmi. He is the coordinator of the entire international activity for PhilCam and CGL, as well as the coordinator for this specific project. So no one better than him can illustrate this in detail. As you saw in your folders, this project also relies on numerous partners. So it is also important not only because of the topic it deals with, but it has a truly international scope. As you can see, we have many countries represented today in this hall, not only among the hosts, but also among the people who came, the guests, but the people who came to be informed about this. So I leave the floor to Gabriele right away. Thank you, Juliana. Thank you to all of you for being here. Before I start my brief presentation of the project, because then we'll have your contribution, I'd like to make some technical announcements, because during an event of this type, you may know that during the organization phase, but during the opening and maybe also later, there are some inconveniences, so we must be ready to make modifications. Some modifications are already being applied, but others will come through as far as organization and also agenda. As Vilcams, we're kind of unlucky in the relationship with Iceland, because during our project in Riccione 4 years ago, about 4 years ago, most of the foreign delegations could not participate because the volcano in Iceland erupted, and many of you could not participate. This afternoon, we should have had the presence of Ulises Garrito, the director of the ETUI training, but he's in Iceland. He could not depart from Iceland, and we hope to have him with us tomorrow. So as a result, we had to modify the sequence of work. The closing of today will be postponed to tomorrow, and the two round tables, the one about the EWCs and the alliances, hoping to have him arrive in time, and then we will organize. We'll have to organize ourselves, changing the agenda if necessary. The positive news is that tomorrow we'll have half an hour of debate less between the two roundtables, but today we'll work for 15 minutes less, and you can go visit the town. Now, having finished these technical announcements, I'd like to give you a presentation of why we presented this project, why we called it as we called it, because MuMMIA is in Italian it means a mummy, something that doesn't move, it's immovable. And from our standpoint, this represented the trade union with respect to its speed of movement at the national level, and with the participation of those who operate in more sectors. So the idea is to go from this immobility to something more. Today, we even show you the logo that we approved in January. So this mummy that was immovable, it has now evolved and it's walking, and we hope for it to have the trade union tools which may permit a better process. Today, during the pilot committee that we held this morning, we better determined the contexts in which this project is to operate, and we reserved to further update this document that we have drafted based on the debate that will emerge from this conference. This conference was set up with these characteristics to represent the different main topics that this project dealt with. This first image can hardly be seen, but I put it in because Francesco Gesualdi could not be here. This is the classification of the New Development Center that his center publishes every year. It is a classification that joins the gross national product of the sovereign states and the multinationals. We just represented the first 90 here. We see Walmart. Some of you may know it. We don't have it in Italy, and we hope it never gets here. It has the 25th revenues. And then in the third column, you see in yellow the companies from the sovereign states with the highest revenues. These are the companies with which we as trade unions must measure ourselves to. Here we are at an extreme synthesis of a meeting to which most of us participated, the annual meeting about the EWCs, and this is the meeting after the new directive. We identified in the conclusions of this meeting 4 priorities that the European Secretary with the delegated to EWCs presented: implementing information and consultation, limiting the margins of confidentiality of data and information, a major problem we have in the EWCs, more training, and we'll discuss this at length tomorrow. Another point that was highlighted was the fact that we must equip ourselves for the intersectoriality of multinationals and specifically the groups. We are therefore focusing on this last aspect, and we are presenting this project in line with the European Confederation of Trade Unions, in line with in sync with those who will participate tomorrow to the round table. Why is it specifically PhilCAMS the one who's proposing a project as MuMMIA? Well, PhilCAM has a specific characteristic. It usually deals with the last phase of the production or offering of service, and we defined it like that. In PhilCAM, we know where the beginning of the river is, and we know if it's a delta or not. But it's difficult. It's difficult to know where the river starts from, where the source of the water is. But it's easy to run into the river during its course. We are the last link of the chain. We know that if a multinational carries out its activity on our territory, in our region, in our country, we know if it is present in our sector, but it's much more difficult to escalate to the mother company of this company. These companies are part of a group which headquarters may be in the United States, the production in Asia, and the assistance may be in many countries, among which Europe. We take care of this last phase, distribution and assistance, and that's why we deal with the last link of the chain in these companies. For us, it is necessary, fundamental, to know in what countries and sectors that multinational is present, so that we can involve the federations, the trade union federations of those countries, in order to set up our strength, which is a trade union alliance that is at the basis of any possible sectorial agreement, including those that must set up or form the European committees. We as PhilCAMS were affiliated to EFAT in Europe and UniGlobal in Europe as well, and we represent a spectrum of what it is in Europe. And one of the categories in Europe that we are affiliated with, we have highlighted in green the different sectors that are followed, that are served by Europe, and the others by PhilCAMS. And we had to use 2 colors because there are several sectors, for example, electricity, or for example, gaming. And I look at Massimo from WITA because it's one of those sectors that is served by plural federations, multiple federations. So it is necessary to have some sort of coordination amongst us. For example, information technology sees us in it with very diverse categories. This representation wants to show the need for coordination within one single trade union organization, not just at the national level, but also at the level of European federations. This is simply a representation of the European Confederation of Trade Unions, and we have highlighted EFA and Unieuropa because in addition to Unieuropa, we are also affiliated to EFA. The problem, the context in which MuMMIA was born is a context that was noted a few years ago. That is the gap, the difference, the huge difference that was recorded between the number of companies, of community levels, and which had the numbers, the appropriate numbers to consider themselves within those who had EWCs installed, and the ones with European communities that were, as a matter of fact, installed. And that is the situation in which MuMMIA emerges. The ETWI database was recording 400 multinationals, and a study that was developed on our request indicated that 10% of these multinationals already had a multisectorial perimeter. Multisectorial that duplicates and goes up to 20% when we talk about groups of enterprises. And the story of these committees is represented here. The history is here. In 20 years, about 1,200 EWCs were installed, an average of 60 per year, even though there were very intense periods. For example, right after the approval of the directives, of these 1,200 of active EWCs, at the time that the project MuMMIA started 2 years ago, there were 900 EWCs that were active, and many of these already had to renegotiate their own agreement after the directive. So out of 900 active EWCs, 2,400 multinationals that could be entitled, there were approximately 1,500 multinationals, which, even though they were covered by the directive, did not have an EWC installed. There were about 50 negotiations, ongoing negotiations, and this is the framework in which we started. So in this context, what we tried to represent was to develop two parallel actions which are not part of one picture. They're part of a movie, a film that continuously changes. So we have two situations. Brings luck. The first one is the one about the existing and installed EWCs. We saw there's about 900. And the second is the situation about the EWCs which have to be installed. With respect to the ones that are installed, one essential element that needs to be assessed is that we have approximately an audience of potential users or components belonging to the EWCs within a production of effective representation in positions, in higher positions, such as, for example, president of secretary. Then if you call a French or a Belgian president, he might get offended. But if you call secretary a Frenchman, he might get offended. Anyhow, we have 20,000 people to turn to. For what? And we'll see about this later. We have an even larger audience than those 1,400 EWCs, where those 14 enterprises where EWCs could be installed, and they still don't. We still have to improve the process of these European committees. We have to improve the conditions until we can have more prepared and effective trade union representatives to reach this objective. In this context, I must make a note, because this presentation, of course, I had prepared it before this morning. But one reflection that emerged during this morning's meeting is the following. It's true that we have to raise some engineering problems, that is, from a technical standpoint and solution of processes. We don't have to forget that there's a political value which must be pushed, driven, reactivated, because a dimension of these problems at a European level is often placed on the back burner, even more in times of crisis, as these past few years, because if in Southern Europe the rights are questioned because they are considered a luxury, specifically the work rights, the labor rights, or trade union rights, you can imagine what impact they may have on the constant and daily activity of workers and trade union delegates in activities that are not closely connected to the defense of the work post and the rights. So the value that was added today, it's that yes, it's true, we have these technical problems too to improve our capacity and effectiveness, but we do not have to underestimate this text in this context, the political role of the trade union. When MuMMIA started, these were the figures. Then Romek from ETUI will provide us with accurate figures because he's the expert in this. But during the evolution, we know that in these 2 years, the situation improved in the sense that we probably went beyond this quota, this level of 1,000 installed EWCs, and we know that of the installed EWCs, the composition is quite varied. Most of them, or more than half, are part of a federation unified in almost all the categories. Therefore, 550 more or less, the uni-European or the ones within the perimeter are 150, 100, the ones from EFAT, meaning in the agricultural and food industry. And in addition to these, we have about 60 of the special negotiation bodies. I don't know if all the WCs are about 80 of European societies, so we're almost at 150. And at this time, I think that the expert as to this is Volker. We have about 220 global agreements. These are the numbers that we must measure ourselves with. And we are in a very specific situation, very particular, the crisis, because this data represents the true information. In the 27 countries of the European Union, restructurations destroy more than what they create. Since the beginning of the crisis until the end of last year, there have been 5,400 restructuring, 1,800,000 work posts were lost. The information about unemployment as of August of 2012 in these countries was of 25 million. We have a large European country made up of unemployed people. From April 2012 until the end of the year, 335 restructurings for several reasons, for bankruptcy, repositioning. The effect, whether it's a bankruptcy or repositioning, doesn't change, in this meaning that these restructurings that were done in the industry and transportation, logistics, finance, they have created less than 50,000 work posts, and these restructuring activities have destroyed more than 72,000 jobs. So we have to respond to that appeal that was made this morning that I relaunched. It's true that we have to fight the crisis, but if we fight the crisis by giving up the tools, specifically the EWCs that we have, we'll lose from the beginning. Why? Because the EWCs must give us an additional push to do what? To foresee the changes and be able to anticipate them. We know that things don't happen from one moment to the other. The companies, especially multinationals, have some extremely long decision-making processes. We know these processes, and we have to improve our activity to anticipate those decisions and foresee those decisions and anticipate them. Therefore, rights and information and consultation to foresee and anticipate these changes, but the EWCs want to also set off another initiative. EWCs, even though the process here seems to be reversed, we must reason, we must think about this process. I believe, too, that if we had had some strong European alliances, it would have been easier to build up some collective or sectorial agreements. But this is what we have, and this is what we must deal with. So the EWCs also have a reference point to be able to negotiate global agreements. MuMMIA, over these past few months, in addition to the 5 workshops held in the several countries, the 100 and so participants, specifically EWC delegates, developed some research instruments. We worked specifically on questionnaires. We produced a questionnaire in 4 languages done by CGL. We have filled out and collected 50, and then Volker will show us the results. And we estimated that in a dynamic such as the one of MuMMIA, that is, to verify the difficulties in the construction phase of these processes, it was difficult to obtain responses simply through these questionnaires. Why? Because most of the time, the one who set up this process leading to the EWC is not the present component of EWC, not the one who's presently sitting within the office of the EWC. One tool was to interview the privileged witnesses, so the experts, those who carried out in a company or in a more ample sector an experience of EWCs, and this part was managed by Massimo, and he will illustrate it. And then there are cases of specific companies. We have identified some, and we obtained 9. There's a graphical mistake here, but it's the same. All the companies that we identify involve at least 2 trade union organizations at the European level. Bosch.
It's just a graphic interface, and the other ones have transport to Uni, and Uni is always there. If you see it, we focused on Uni, the trade union we are affiliated with. The case studies were taken care by Gianluca Iacovangeli, and then we will talk about them later on. All this material, and I think that during the conference it will be published on the website, available initially in English and in Italian, and it's all going to be available in its language, but we won't dwell on them right now. So our objective as MuMMIA is how to improve our trade union action, both political and organizational. We have noticed that between the delegates, between the various trade union organizations, between national and European trade unions, there are some barriers. We focused especially on the language barrier, and I would like to thank the interpreters once again. So the language barriers are a great obstacle that can be overcome through the interpreters. But there's also the history and the way of behaving and the traditions between the various organizations. So there sometimes is some incompatibility between them. So finding a common language, a way of doing trade unionism, not only with reference to language, but also with a way of behaving, is one of the aspects that we would like to pursue. Within this context, if we were able to identify common operational methods, we would make an important step forward from a quality viewpoint. Another thing that we focused on is the website that is at last operational. Marinella Migliorini is in the photo, so I would like to have this at the forefront. It's a website on the construction. It will be bilingual in 2 languages, and already now you can find the proceedings of the conference and some of the presentations that we are presenting at the moment. Okay, Marinella, I will remove the photo. Yes, Isabella is there too. Yes, there's also Isabella. Isabella, Marinella, and then there are some other boys, but we'll not talk about them. So this is going to be the basis on which, from an operational viewpoint, together we will try and manage the information and the experiences that there are on the website. As of tomorrow, there's a conference for the new project, briefly hosted in this MuMMIA's website. We have the first page, which is blocked, the first page of tomorrow's project Save Host. This is a multimedia tool that enables us to communicate better. Thank you. I'm sorry for speaking so quickly. I apologize to the interpreters. And we move on now. And moving on, if possible, and I hope we manage, I would like to show you another video I am particularly fond of. If I don't put my glasses on, I'll never find the video.
Eccolo qua. A proposito di multinazionali.
Talking about multinationals, we are faced with a true clash on the transnational corporations and the state. They appear to be interfered with in their political function, in their economic function, in the military function, by global organizations that do not depend on any state, and their responsibilities are not going through any parliament, through any representation institution for the collective interest. In a word, the whole political structure of the world is being crushed. The large transnational corporations attack the interests of developing countries, but their uncontrolled action acts also in industrialized countries where they have their headquarters. Our trust in ourselves, our self-confidence that increases our trust in the big values of the community and in the certainty that these values will have to prevail and that will not be destroyed and cannot be destroyed.